Good morning, multipliers. How are you today? How are you, Judah?
I'm doing great. How are you, babe?
Doing good. I tell you, yesterday was an interesting day in the world, Judah.
Was it?
So specifically in the United States. So as we all know, recently the United States was struck by great tragedy. Mm-hmm. And that was the Orlando shooting. The Christina Gimme, I can't remember her last Grimmy, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's Grimmy.
And then the other stuff all around the world, United States, and plus a growing thing. And so there's a lot of talk of gun control, gun rights. Where do we fall within that? And so I was kind of thinking about what to talk about today. And I thought, really, this is something we want to talk about because it's something about the Christian worldview. So, how much you've been at work? You were at work all day yesterday. So, did you get a chance to hear much about it, Judah?
I honestly heard nothing of it.
So obviously, there's two very competing different ideals about what's to happen in the world of gun control. Now, there's different, obviously variations between there, but two main worldviews: those who say we shouldn't have them, and those who say we should have as much as we want, basically. Mm-hmm. So here's the basics. So there was like three bills that went. The first one that got struck down. Basically, one was the first one from Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa. He was a Republican from Iowa, and he just wanted to enhance funding for background checks. That one failed. The second vote was a measure for Senator Chris Murphy, a Democrat from Connecticut, and that was to expand background checks, close the so-called gun show loophole where firearms are purchased and are not tracked. Another one was a Republican from Senator John Cornyn. How would you say that last name? Cornyn of Texas, and his measure was to that would delay gun sales of shipments to suspected terrorists for 72 hours, but require a prosecutor to go to court and show probable cause to block the permanent sale. Actually, the NRA, the National Rifle Association, actually backed that one, but that one also failed. The final vote was for a measure from Dianna Feinstein, she's a Democrat from California, and she had a vote. Hers was that to keep people of on a government terrorist watch list or suspected terrorists from buying guns. The Department of Justice endorsed that one, and it also failed. So these are four drastically different bills, but very similar. I think it beckons discussion about what we think about that. What should we feel about these things? So, I mean, and we see the two different sides of like none and a lot. I think that truth, as with most things, finds its way somewhere in the middle.
Well, these were pretty much supporting gun rights, right?
No, they look like on the surface. I mean, one of them, probably the most frightening in some senses, would have been the last one, which was that the terrorist one, which I agree that we should not be. If there's somebody's on the terrorist watch list or has been investigated by the FBI, as this guy was, there probably should be a little bit more background there to figure out what's going on.
Right.
But we also see that hers said it was anybody who was a suspected terrorist also. So basically, if the government suspects you of being a terrorist, and then it's where do we draw that line? And that's where you really get into an issue, because being a Christian, saying stuff that we say, having the beliefs we believe, someday that may be considered some sort of a sense of this.
Right.
So we don't know where that's going to go. So I don't feel like that's something we want to say either, because where does that line go? Where does it get drawn? You know what I mean?
Right.
But then you see some of the other ones, and one of them was just for further for further funding. I like the one also that was actually backed by the NRA, but it said that they could block it for 72 hours if they were on this watch list. And I feel like it has to be more available. This information is the big thing. I think it's kind of silly that this guy was on an FBI watch list, and yet nobody did anything about this.
Right.
Not only that, like Disney reportedly warned the FBI about this guy. Did you hear that? Disney actually they said, this guy, you might want to take a look at him. So there's just so much going on in this thing. Where do we as Christians fall in this? What are we supposed to do? And I believe the right to bear guns is really important. I think it's important that we have the ability, to do that. Let alone it was important to our founding fathers. The right to bear arms is in our Constitution. It's important. So,
Well, I've seen things on like the only thing I've seen on Facebook and stuff recently is just people talking about like how easy it is to purchase a gun. And I mean I've never purchased a gun because I'm not that type of person. But have you
I've been
gone through
yeah.
the process of purchasing a gun?
Yes.
Is it like a hard procedure?
I mean,
or,
it's
like-
not hard, but I mean, they do a background check on you and stuff like that. I mean, there
Right.
are steps in there, you know what I mean, to where you can get
Well,
it.
and there's people. I mean, they expect you to catch everyone. They can't if you don't have a criminal background. I mean, what do you? There's always a first time for everything. You know what I mean?
And here's the thing too, it's that, and I totally understand the heart of the people who are saying this stuff, like, like we need to get all these guns out, or, and I'm not saying I don't see the merit in it. What I have a problem with is this, it's that when you, and you may disagree with me, but it's true. Okay, so there's, like, fully automatic guns are not supposed to be illegal in the United States. I mean, you can get permits, special permits, but they're not supposed to be easy to get, basically, for like a fully automatic gun. But guess what? People get them.
Right.
And I'm talking illegally. Yes, and people get the permits, all that stuff. But people can find ways to get them illegally. Doesn't matter how much we go over. I mean, I was watching a show on like the criminal underworld, and there's like villages like in South America where they make counterfeit guns. Like there's like a guy, and he tries to make a gun or two a week, and then he sells them off, and it comes all the chain. And guess where it ends up? Here, because there are these black guns that aren't on the market at all. They're illegal. They have no serial numbers. All this stuff. So what we see, guys, is that it's not like it's this thing we can just control. It's not something we can just go through and say to ourselves like, this is the issue in here. But the fact is, if we were to take away everybody's, all we're doing is like taking good people like us who aren't going to go out and do bad things, and we're allowing them to be vulnerable to someone else.
Right. Yeah, and it's just like making something illegal, like if they ban guns or whatever, is not going to keep people. It's not going to keep the bad people from getting these guns. Like
Yep.
they're gonna people do drugs. Those people that do drugs are not going to stop doing drugs because they're illegal. They're going to continue. They're going to find them somehow. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
And I think that's right. I think what really comes down to, guys, is like the heart of the issue. And I think that's what this is we're missing the heart of what this is. And that's that God, our hearts are wrong here. We're sinful. And that, I said this in our reaction, or not reaction, but our response video to the Orlando shooting. And that's that, sin leads to more sin. And like, everyone has sinned. We've all fallen short. There's no way around it. I'm a sinful person at my core. But God saved me, and so I'm trying to come out of that. You know what I mean? And now I've been made new. I'm seeking to become more and more like Christ. And so far, what we do in our lives before we have Christ is we continue to perpetuate that same thing, to keep walking in that same section, that same vial, and that leads to more and more. And that's why we see every generation gets a little bit more away from their parents, a little more away from like good moral standing. All these things begin because people get further and further away from Christ. I think that's a sad thing. But you look at this gun debate and everything like that, and I think the Christian position is that it's a heart issue. It's not that something, and I think you can be a Christian and have different beliefs on this. I don't think that's the thing either.
Right.
But what I think biblically where it stands, where we lie into, is that we need to support the what freedom, basically, because you start stripping away freedoms one by one, and guess what? Before you know it, everything's gone. Our ability to sit here and say that we believe a certain thing versus that's different from someone else could be gone. And so we have to be willing to stand strong, stand up for good moral values, because we as Christians have become a very backsliding, like, oh, I don't want to defend you. I don't want to make you mad people. And what we've done is we've allowed ourselves to become a run over, and guess what? They're still getting mad. But we're just sitting there and becoming more and more of a doormat. You look at Jesus, you look at God, you look at the Old Testament, the people of God. They were not doormats for anybody.
Right.
And I think that's the important part.
Yep.
So let us know, guys, what do you think about this debate thing going on? What do you think about what's happening in our politics, our world, our spiritual sense as a nation? Where are we right now? Where are you? What are your thoughts? We'd love to hear about it in the comments down below. But yeah, let's just spend a couple minutes here, Judo, real brief, focus, talking about what God's doing in our lives, all right? And our focus really runs straight with this. It runs straight with it. We're going to be in the book of Isaiah, chapter 6, Judah. If you want to start off reading, just read 6 through.
Wait, chapter 6.
Chapter 6, yep, 6 through 1 through 5, please.
Okay. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings, and With 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the threshold shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King of the Lord of hosts.
So, as we look at this passage, and the way this runs in is we see a lot in this passage, Judy, about God. One of the cool things about this is it says in that he saw the Lord sitting upon his throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe was filled the entire temple. Now, this is very, very important because of the time in which this was. Now, now we think of it, if you were to see a guy in shorts or a guy in pants, you're not going to think about, well, their social class, just because of that necessarily inherently. But you look at this and you see that at this time, the length of your robe was the length of your royalty, of your how wealthy or something along those lines you were. And
Respected and stuff.
yeah, so like a slave, exactly, Julia. Like a slave would wear like almost like shorts or kind of like a very, very short, possibly like just undergarments or something like that, essentially like a wrapped up. A middle class man would wear something more of a mid-length. And then a king or a noble would wear it down to their ankles, and a king would really have like robes that went down behind the train. But we see God's robes fill the entire room, meaning to say that there's no end to them. It's massive. This is a huge thing, and so you see God's holiness, his magnitude here. And then above he says he sits and he sees the wings of these angels that are going around. They're praising him all day long, saying, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of God of hosts. The whole earth is filled with your glory. We see that it says it 3 times. We know that multiple times in the Hebrew language, and it was a matter of emphasis. And 3 was the meaning. It was incredibly the most emphasis you could give to it. And then it says, as the foundation shook, and this is where we're going to stick it. And the whole house was filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me, for I am lost. I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the Lord of hosts. You can see as Isaiah sees this, he is overwhelmed with the holiness, the magnitude of God. And he realizes he's unclean, that the people he lives with are unclean, that he is not worthy to be where he is. And he says that, his eyes have seen the host. And we see here the last thing in verse 6, he says, And then behold, the seraphim flew to me, and having grabbed the burning coal from the altar, he had taken with the tongs. It says he touched my mouth and said, Behold, this has touched your lips, and your guilt has been taken away by the sin, and your sin atoned for. Now, this is from the altar. First off, the altar was a place of sacrifice. It was a place where we sacrifice things to God. When he takes it from the altar, he's taking much like what Jesus did. And he came from the altar. He's taking a sacrifice from it of the sin that's been atoned for. And he's atoning for Isaiah's sins here. But we see that God cleanses him. And the thing, guys, I'm trying to say here from this, and this goes with what we're talking about, because sometimes we need to realize the magnitude of our God, the greatness of who he is. And, like situations like this whole gun debate and everything going on, all the election time, all these things happening, they seem so out of our reach. They seem so far beyond what we can even begin to control. But yet, we have to realize that our God's in control. And not only that God chose, he says, who will go? And Isaiah says, he says, we see further, he says, who will go? And Isaiah says, I will. And you see here that this continues on because God has made a purpose for Isaiah. He's made a purpose for you to go out and do something great. But we have to realize that it starts with God being holy, being great. Mm-hmm. And being willing to say, here am I, I'll go. Being willing to realize that even though we dwell in the midst of people unclean lips, that we are unclean ourselves, that we're sinful people, that God is greater than those problems. He's greater than those things, and he has a purpose that needs to be filled.
Well, and I think what's really cool about this too is that Isaiah doesn't see just how, I guess it uses the word unclean here, but like how unclean and how unworthy he is until he sees how worthy God is.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
That's a great point, Judah.
So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't even realize how far off he is until he sees, because I say this a lot too. It's like, a lot of times we say to ourselves, oh, I'm a good person. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, guys, what we're doing, no matter who it is, if you take the person you think is the best person in the world, the best person you can think of, And you see, you take them, you look at them, you're looking at them against other things that are other sinful people.
Right.
And you know, well, it's like if I was to take you guys, and I took you and I sat you down at a table, and I took a one bowl, and I had, let's say I picked up just a pile of dirt on 2 different plates. And I wisp one off, and I kind of take it, it's dirty, guppy mud on both of them. And one of them, I take a thing, and I take out a rag, and I wipe it down as clean as I can get it, and it gets fairly clean, right? But then the other one I just take, and I just leave it, and I set there both, and I take a sandwich, and I put it on top of both plates. And I say, choose one and eat it. Now, one, obviously, when you look, it appears far cleaner than the other one. Far more appetizing. At least that one's not the dirt. But it doesn't matter. They're both dirty. You see, and it's not until you take it and compare it against something that's perfect, holy, just, and beyond what we can even
Right.
understand.
Now take a sandwich and put it on a sparkling clean plate, and which one would you know what I mean?
You
tell
begin to see the difference,
there.
yeah. The comparison. And then that's really what it comes down to, guys. And so that's my hope, and then that we realize from this that, yeah, I'm a sinful person, and that's okay if I do the right things with it. If I give it to God. You see, Isaiah says, woe is me. He realizes the fault in his life and realizes he needs that. He needs what God has. And I think that's where the pivotal change comes. We're all sinners. Doesn't matter who we are, where we get, what life things we have. We're all sinners, and we need God.
Amen.
So, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today to The Focus. Do you guys like these more current events things we're doing lately? I mean, do you enjoy them? Please comment down below. Let us know what you think about them, because we'd like to know if this is what we want to keep doing or not. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, hit that likes button to let us know you enjoyed it. If you want to see more, hit that subscribe button to see all the content we put up all the time. And I guess, guys, as always, I'm Dan.
And I'm Judah.
God bless.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.